Hi book friends, welcome back to my show. I am a Jen who reads, and this is my August reading wrap up, and it was a great month for reading. So let's start with the books that I don't physically have with me. I read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace on Kindle Unlimited. I did read this as part of a FOMO romance edition vlog that I did, which you can find on my channel. Out of all the books that I read for that video, Icebreaker was my favorite one, and I rated it 4 stars. But again, if you want a full review of that book, you can visit my FOMO romance video. Then on audio, I listened to The Husbands by Holly, I should have looked up her last name, Grazimano or something like that. I didn't really have this book on my radar. It wasn't really one that I wanted to pick up. I have seen a lot of people talk about it on social media, but it was available immediately on my on the Libby app. So I'm like, all right, I don't have anything else to listen to. Let me get it. It was an interesting concept. It definitely held my attention. I like books that are about trying things in your life over and over and over again until you get the perfect result. So this is a story about a lady, and she's single, and she comes home one night, and there's a man in her house, and he says that he is her husband. And at first she doesn't believe him, but then as she looks around her house, she sees that there's wedding photos of them up. There are some things in their house that are actually different, like design choices. And eventually she realizes that this husband came out of her attic. And whenever she sends a husband up to her attic, a different husband comes down. So she's kind of just going through these men, going up and down the attic, up and down the attic. And some of them stay for a little while. Some of them, she knows right away that they're not for her. Until one day a man comes down out of the attic, and he is shocked because he has been going up and down women's attics for years and years. So he's on the opposite end of this. He's been a husband who has been going up and down attics and in and out of cupboards and wardrobes and stuff like that, and coming out in a different life with a different wife every time. So they're trying to navigate this new way of life. The idea, the concept behind the book was really, really good, was really, really interesting. But in the end, it was nothing spectacular, and I gave it 3 stars. Next, I listened to Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. I had gotten some advice that I should listen to this book instead of read it, because if you listen to it on audio, there are chapters that are podcasts. And in the audio, you get the full gambit. You get the music and the voices, and it really makes you feel like you're listening to a podcast. So that was really interesting. That made it for an interesting listen. However, the ending was nothing cool. It was nothing shocking. It was nothing surprising. The whodunit at the end was just somebody else that we met along the way. No grand reveals, nothing that I felt shocked about. I felt pretty let down. I did give this book a 2.75. And the next book I listened to on audio was The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This is a little bit like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, except for there's no magic. So this is about a woman who is a kindergarten aide, and she meets a boy in her class who is a foster kid, and she wants to adopt him. She wants to foster to adopt him, but her home life does not allow for that. She does not make very much money. She doesn't have a car. She lives in an apartment or like a house with a bunch of roommates. So she's doing everything she can to just get her life to a place where she can foster to adopt this little boy. And they have bonded over a book series that she fell in love with as a child. And then she gets invited to the island of the person who wrote these books to compete in a game that is full of riddles and puzzles and mysteries. And the winner of this game will win the only copy of his unreleased manuscript, which then they could sell for a lot of money. So she goes, she tries to compete for the grand prize. Along the way, she learns a lot about herself and a lot about other people on the island, a lot about what she wants in life. And the ending does not turn out the way you think. It actually turns out a lot better. I rated this book a 3.75, and I would recommend it. This next book I do have a physical copy of. However, I listened to this on audio, and that is City of Fallen Angels, and this is book 4 in the Mortal Instrument series. I did rate this a 4 because in the grand scheme of the series itself, I thought it was a really good book. However, what I didn't like about it was I felt like not a lot went on. We were introduced to some new characters. I really feel like this was a filler book. There was not a lot of action until the very end. My biggest gripe with this is that I listened to it on audio, and this is the 3rd book in the series that I listened to audio. And this is the first book that I've had this problem with. Actually, it was 2 problems. I listened to my audiobooks on 1.5 or 1.75 speed, just sort of depending. And there's 2 POVs in this book. There is a male POV and there is a female POV. So when I was listening to the male POV, the 1.75 was the perfect speed. But without changing the speed level, when it went to the female point of view, it felt like it was even slower than normal speed. And it drove me crazy. The female point of view, the narrator was just talking so slow. The other thing that really bothered me was the narrator in the male point of view had some sort of a pretty thick accent, but the characters, when we would switch from the narrator to the dialogue, had no accent at all. So I don't know why the decision was made to have I don't know why the decision was made to have the narrator of the male point of view have the strong accent when nobody else did. It was kind of jarring to go back and forth between a really strong accent to no accent. So that's my biggest gripe with this on audio. However, love the book, love the series. Can't wait to continue it and pick up the next one this month. Out of all my physical reads, this was my least favorite, Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This is the 2nd book in the Red Rising trilogy. So I read the Red Rising book, the first one in the trilogy, in July, and I loved it. And I have a hard time with sci-fi because I really like sci-fi, but if the book has too much talk about like battle strategies, scientific equipment like warships and stuff like that, my eyes just sort of glaze over and I don't love it. Red Rising did have a lot of that, but it also had so many impactful moments with people. It made the book a quicker read, and that the parts that I didn't enjoy so much were really not that big of a deal. Golden Sun to me was the opposite, and I have heard so many mixed reviews on this. To me, most of Golden Sun was all of the stuff that I didn't like, but all of the great stuff, all of the relationships, all of the reveals happened at the very end. So for this book, I did not like the journey, but I liked the destination. However, that being said, the journey did not dissuade me from the series as a whole. I am still going to read Morning Star before I make my final decision if I'm going to read the rest of the series. I gave this a 3 stars. The next book that I finished in August is one that actually took me 2 months to read, and that was on purpose. This was not a book that I had on a TBR. This was a book that I was reading for a bingo card that I was trying to fulfill. And I knew it was a longer book, and I knew that it was a book that I did not want to rush through, so I took my time on it, and I did finish it in the month of August. That's Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. At this time, this is a standalone, but I have heard that that could possibly change in the future. The magic system in this book is based on color and breath, and it is unlike anything that I have ever read. The characters in this book, the plot twists, the reveals, the backstabbing in this book were amazing. Funny enough, my critique of this book, my negative of this book, is the exact same negative, the same exact critique that I had for Elantris. In both of these books, Warbreaker and Elantris, there was a POV that was from somebody that had to do with the religion aspect of the society that we were in. And as I was reading these POVs in both books, I was bored. I did not understand how they connected. I was not interested in them. Whenever we got to those POVs, I was sort of like, eh. But at the end, both characters in the religion aspect, the religious POVs, pulled out strong, made me cheer for them, made me cry, and ended up being some of my favorite characters in the book as a whole. Everything that I've picked up by Brandon Sanderson, with the exception of his White Sands graphic novels, have been an absolute smash for me. Next on the list is to start the Stormlight Archive, so I'm really excited to get to that in the very, very near future. My Discord book club, which is free to join, so you can message me for the link if you are interested, decided for the month of August that the Thursday Murder Club was going to be our book. And this has been on my shelf for quite a long time, so I was super excited to pick it up. I read through this so fast. I gave it a 5 stars. I love the characters. They are so hilarious. I really like how the author just gives us little tidbits of the characters' lives. So these characters are all retired. They're in their 70s, 80s, and they lived a full life before we met them in this book. And some of them have lived very interesting lives, possibly very secretive lives. And we get little sprinkles of that throughout the book, but we don't get any heavy reveals about what they did in their younger years. So I'm excited to see what those are in future books. I think that the author, the writing, did such a good job at using those bits of information to like really hook you and make you excited for the rest of the book. So this is about a group of retired people who meet on Thursday mornings and talk about murder. And they try to find cold cases and talk about maybe trying to solve them. And then one day there is an actual murder at their retirement village and they get involved and they help out the police. The twists and the reveals I did not see coming. Some of them were heartbreaking. I think I did almost cry a few times at this book. There are 4 books in the series, and from what I understand, the books at the end are very emotional. You get very attached to these characters, and I have already picked up book 2 to start in September. I love this book. 5 stars. Cannot recommend it enough. And then the last book that I read in the month of August was one of my favorites. That is The Raven's Tale by Edgar Allan Poe. I picked this up because I found it at a thrift store. And it has a little blurb right here about Edgar Allan Poe, and I love Poe, love Poe. I teach him to my class. I'm currently teaching him to my class. We are reading through all of his weird, creepy, macabre stories. I gave this a 5 star. I know a lot about the life and the works of Poe, and scattered throughout this book were a lot of references to his works. The author uses a lot of words that he uses in his work, such as pendulum, chamber, wrapping, dreary. She uses those in her narration, in her writing in the book. And so to me, they were like little Easter eggs. My review of this book would be if you are an Edgar Allan Poe fan, you are familiar with his works, you are familiar with his life, I think you will eat this book up. However, if you are not familiar with Poe, I don't think that this book is going to really capture your attention. This follows Poe through about 2 years of his life, leading up to him going to the university, and then his first year at the university, and a little bit after he returns home from his first year. In this book, his muse, Lenore, comes to life, and you sort of see the struggle between them. He doesn't want to write these weird, creepy, macabre stories because it's looked down on in his society. And his stepfather is also super against him with anything that he has to do with poetry. And so this is a struggle between him and his muse. And it was such an interesting concept to read a book where the muse comes to life. Highly recommend it if you like Edgar Allan Poe. Otherwise, I would probably not pick this one up. So that was my month of August. I really enjoyed all of the reads that I did read. I read 9 books. My average rating was 3.67, which I think that's pretty good. That's almost 4 stars. And September is looking up to be even better. So until next time, happy reading.